All right, the recorder has now been restarted. But over the past 12, 14 years, this machine, or the controller of this machine has moved from a non-processor-based product, which makes it very hard to control, to a semi-customized processor control, to a customized processor control, to a customized PCB or printed circuit board with custom programming. So it has changed over the years. Why do you think it has seen so many changes over the years?
Because technology is advanced and people can do it. So
Okay, that's one reason. Yeah, we can do it. Okay, we can do it with better technology. Adapting.
User.
Right. And for the most part, it's all of those reasons plus one more, reliability. Okay. As it turned out, the oldest version of this machine using this particular controller was not reliable at all. A lot of times, it cannot control well enough to get to the right position. So it would jam, when the machine tries to insert the cigarette into the carousel or the wheel, it would jam because the hole doesn't line up with the insertion mechanism. So that was the first generation. So we had to move on to a processor controlled system where I can control the number of steps with a stepper motor control. So I can actually control the positioning of the carousel a little bit better. So that was the second generation, but it has problems with the electronics, and that's why we move on to the third generation. The third generation had 3 PCBs, 3 separate printed circuit boards. It was not particularly designed for a machine like this, so there were some issues too. Some of the transistors keep blowing out, and there are some other issues, and that's why we move on to the next generation, which is the current one. But I can see it's going to run out of gas within the next 5 years or so. One, because the chip may not be available anymore. Okay, we are not talking about chips that will keep the manufacturers will stop making those chips at some point because there's no demand of those chips anymore. So the next generation I can see will be a Raspberry Pi based controller. I can keep the rest of the electronics, like controlling the lighters and stuff like that, but the main controller, the main brain part of the machine will change to a Raspberry Pi because that can meet more future demands. Like if people want to hook up a webcam to actually see it operating at the same time so they can remotely monitor and see whether the machine has jammed or not. Right now I don't have the processing power to do that. But with a Raspberry Pi, I can quite easily integrate a webcam into this whole thing so people can remotely log in and actually see the whole thing in operation and check whether it's jamming or not, and also check on the level of the magazine and stuff like that. And it can also hook up to more lab equipment too. So the other lab equipment has knowledge of whether the smoking machine itself is operational or not, and then it can do different things depending on whether this is working or not. So this is one example of a quote-unquote information system that is not very typical. Okay, what about the computers in your car? Would you classify those as information systems too? Or would you think, no, they're just some sort of computers inside a car? They're definitely information systems, except they're very different. It's not a server sitting somewhere in the cloud that you don't know where it is. It's in your car. Okay. What about the development? Who's the user, by the way? What type of actors and use cases do we have for computers in the car? Let's say the anti-lock brake system. If I were to draw, okay, go ahead. Mechanics, very good. Okay, so if we are to draw pictures, remember in the use case diagram, we use metric stick figures for actors. So in one case, we have mechanic, or mechanic, as a singular, because remember each actor represents an entire category of people or machines that can interact with the system itself. So a mechanic definitely is one person who can use the anti-lock system. How would a mechanic use an anti-lock system? Anti-lock braking refers to the controller or the brain that controls the anti-lock mechanism of your car. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about? Anti-locking? Okay, when you slam on your brakes, instead of locking the wheels, so you lose control altogether. The anti-lock brake mechanism is a controller-based technology. So your wheel will continue to spin, but it will give you the maximum traction to slow down the car. So in case you cannot slow it down enough and you will still have to collide with something, you can choose what to collide or fall off the cliff. You can bump the car in front of you, or you can choose to swerve off the road. At least you have a choice. Okay, so in that case, how would a mechanic, someone who's working with a repair garage, use the anti-lock system? What do I put here in these words? How about diagnostics? Okay. So a mechanic can use the anti-lock system computer to perform diagnostics. In other words, it can try to see if the sensor is still working correctly. It can check whether the actuators are working correctly. It can even check some other things like how many times the anti-lock brake system has been engaged in the past, 10 days or whatever. But this is not the only use case. Now remember, when we have a use case diagram, you have to draw a line connecting an actor to a use case. What would be another use case of an anti-lock system? What is the other category of people who would interact with the anti-lock brake system?
The driver.
The driver, very good. So here we have driver. As an actor, remember this is an entire class of people who can interact with the system. How would I, name this label here?
Braking.
Braking, very good. Yep, so that's how a driver would use an anti-lock brake system. Anything else? Potentially, we can also have another computer in the car to also interact with the anti-lock brake system, because when you turn the ignition key, what do you see on your dashboard?
Lights.
You get a whole bunch of lights, okay? But if you have anti-lock brakes in your car, do you see anything specific to the anti-lock brakes? Anti-lock brakes is ABS. You see the ABS indicator, right? Why do you think there's an ABS indicator?
So in case it fails, that light will come on.
Exactly. So that means, in addition to a mechanic performing diagnostics on your ABS system, something else is also interacting with your ABS system. So in terms of diagnostics, in addition to the mechanic, you also have another computer. But this time, I still use a metric stick figure, even though it is not a person. It is still an agent outside of the ABS system. So that's why it is still an actor. And that's basically your car's overall computer or controller. So I can say it's a main vehicle controller. And that's another actor that can interact with the ABS computer in terms of using it for diagnostic purposes. How many computers do you think are in your car these days? If you just go to a garage, not a garage, if you go to go buy a new car today, and you find the least expensive car, affordable, the most affordable car. What is it, by the way? Is it an Accent from Hyundai, something along that line? Okay. How many computers do you think you can find on those cars?
Less than more luxury cars.
I would say, but in terms of the number of computers, I would say you can probably find about 10 individual computer systems, even in an econo box. Because the ABS has one computer, engine control has another computer, then you have the main computer, in charge of the dashboard and the actual user interface. Most of the time, you have another computer in charge of, air conditioning and that sort of control. Perhaps another one in terms of vehicle stability, which is now required. Okay, it was not required a few years ago, and now all cars are required to have vehicle stability control. Does anyone know the differences between a vehicle stability control versus ABS?
I think if I'm not mistaken, vehicle stability is to make sure you don't flip. It's usually on SUV.
But it is required on
Yeah.
all cars. It's not just flipping, it's also, you don't lose traction on one wheel, so your
Yeah,
car
so you don't
loses
start
control.
sliding.
Yep. It makes cars less fun to drive, by the way.
Yeah.
Depending on how you drive and what kind of driving you do.
It's not as annoying as the ABS though.
It's not,
It's not as annoying as ABS.
oh,
ABS really sucks.
it depends on the car, it depends on your tires too. But that means, we are, when we talk about information systems, we are not really talking about traditional information systems, and the computers have to sit in a big, huge room, with all the blinky lights. Sometimes, these computers have no user interfaces, other than, let's say in this case, how do you interact with an ABS system?
Stop the brake.
The brake paddles, right? That's the only user interface. And plus the indicator light, the ABS light, on the dashboard. Those are the only thing that you see as a driver. But yet it is a very important system in your car, and it takes a lot of time to develop as well. Now let's go back to the textbook a little bit, and we'll use the textbook just so that we can see all the different steps and processes involved in the development of an ABS system in this case. I'm just using that as an example, as something that is actually an information system, but yet a lot of times we don't think of it as such. And by the way, if anyone worries about outsourcing and issues like that, becoming a car mechanic, you don't have to worry too much about outsourcing.
Yeah.
Right?
Having to send your cars out to Japan.
It'll be
China.
pretty expensive to do it. You can, but it's very expensive to do so.
Only for luxury cars that have to go back there.
Right, like Ferraris.
Yeah, Ferrari.
For Ferraris, you can afford it too.
Yeah.
Most people who can afford a Ferrari can afford it to have it shipped back to Italy for repair work and then shipped back
They
here.
actually fix it at your house.
Oh, they come to your house?
Yeah. Complimentary. Anything above Ferrari, Lamborghini, any Rolls Royce especially, they will ship a fleet of mechanics to your house to fix it.
Oh,
That's insane.
They don't let you get anywhere near the dealership if you have that much money to buy a car like that. They don't want to put you through the trouble. Mercedes and BMW actually do that for their 9 Series and higher. They go to your
wow.
house and set you up, and they make sure your car is brand new, no one sat in it.
They don't want you to go walk into the
Yeah.
dealership and say, something's wrong with my car, it just wouldn't start today. Have you checked your gas tank? Oh. But I just filled it up yesterday and I only drove 50 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a Lamborghini. That's the price you pay for a Lamborghini. All right, so we'll go back to system design, and also, we'll start with system design. Okay. We'll just look at these activities here. Identify potential solutions, evaluate solution and select the best, select hardware and software, develop application specifications, and obtain approval to implement the new system. Do you think these steps all apply to the ABS subsystem of a car?
Yeah.
Every single one? The answer is absolutely, absolutely every single one. In fact, I think in the case of an ABS system, selecting hardware and software is even more important than a general information system. Okay, why do you think selecting the hardware particularly has a lot of impact to the quality of an ABS system?
Because if you pick hardware that isn't good enough, it'll break early or easily, and it won't work.
Yep, and what happens when the ABS subsystem stops working?
You don't get to pick between the car and the cliff.
Yep, exactly. Or the rock, versus
Yeah.
the cliff. Yeah, I would pick the rock first.
Yeah.
It's easier to do that than keep falling. You don't know how far down that cliff is.
Yep, exactly.
Could be just the road shoulder though. Doesn't have to be.
Yep. What about developing application specification? I mean, it's an ABS. What type of specifications are we talking about? It has one job to do: is do not lock the wheels, right? Well, is there anything more than that we can specify with an ABS, system? It's very easy not to lock the wheels. The question is, can you not lock the wheels and yet give the maximum braking, ability? That's the question. Okay. In fact, a lot of professional drivers, like race car drivers, do not like ABS because they can actually modulate the brakes a little bit better than ABS, and they can actually stop the car faster than a car with ABS. Now that depends on the car and also the driver, and also depends on the road condition. When you have your car, half of it is on gravel and half of it is on pavement, then it's really hard to do it manually. There's just no way you can control, the braking ability, distribute the braking power on all four wheels and still keep it straight. But assuming the road condition is uniform, it's just pavement, some drivers can do it. They can do what we call threshold braking, better than a machine can. But for most consumers, the machine can still do better because when most people in an emergency just kind of slams on the brake, right? You don't think about, okay, am I locking yet? Should I let it go a little bit? You don't think like that. You just slam on the brake, and that's why ABS still works. It still works better than most people can. But the specification in this case can be specified as, I need, this particular program, or I need this system to at least have 90% of all the potential braking ability of the braking system. So you can specify a percentage, okay? So for a performance kind of car, or for a more expensive car, you can, maybe the manufacturer will specify 95%. Okay, so the system is more efficient in terms of braking. But a econo box, maybe someone would say, we'll just save money and get like 85% of all the potential braking power. Other types of specification is, does it only need to work when all four wheels are on the same type of surface, or does it also have to work when all four wheels are on different surfaces? Potentially one side is on, as I said, paved road, and the other side is on gravel. Is it supposed to work in those situations? Well, it's either yes or no, but nonetheless, that's also a part of the specification. All right, let's go ahead and skip a little bit here. So we go back to, so from design, we go to implementation. Back. Now these are the steps in implementation. If you just look at the checklist here, purchase and install hardware and or software. Now that part, is kind of, it's interesting in this case because we have to produce the actual system and install that in every single car. So you still have to purchase and install hardware for the test unit. Okay, as a part of the implementation, you still have to do the purchasing and the installation for a test car within the manufacturer's facilities. Create the applications, meaning to actually write the programs. Test applications. How do we do that? There are multiple ways to do it. If you are, let's say, BMW or Toyota, how would you test the ABS of your cars? What would be the first thing you do?
Test drive. Back to that simulation.
Simulation, very good. Who said it? Very good. So you do it by simulation first. In other words, you can basically collect real life, data from driving an existing car, and then you can feed the same information to the anti-lock brake system and see whether it will actually come to the right decision at the right time. Okay, and this way you can do all the testing, all the preliminary testing, without even the hardware, like the actual anti-lock brake system. You don't need the actual mechanisms. You just need the software and also the real life data that you collected over time, and see whether the car can determine when to start the anti-lock brake mechanism. The actual anti-lock post modulation That is really hard to simulate. You can simulate it to a certain point, but it's really hard to simulate actual interaction between a tire and the surface of a road. So for that, you actually need someone to drive it, on different types of surfaces, wet road, slick road, dry road, gravel, sand, and snow, and so on and so forth, and collect data from all of those situations and see whether the application is working the way it is supposed to. Any questions at this point? Questions? So we have test application, finalized documentation. You look at you look up the manual that comes with your car. Do you see a big section on the ABS subsystem and tells you everything about it? No. It tells you two things, right? One, in an emergency situation, just slam on the brakes. Don't worry about the pulsating sensation, because the mechanism will actually try to release and apply the brakes, release and apply the brakes high frequency. And then the second thing it will tell you is you need to take the car to the dealership or a repair shop when you see the ABS indicator light remaining on after you turn on the ignition. And those are the only two things that you need to know. That's the documentation from which is the user's perspective. But if you think about it, the users usually don't get a lot of documentation. Do you get any documentation from Amazon.com as a consumer? Then how did you learn how to use Amazon? Well, you just know how to use it, right? So what are we talking about here when we say documentation? How about internal to Toyota? Do you think internal to Toyota there will be lots of documentation for every single subsystem in a car? Yep, you got it. They must have a lot of documentation. I think some of that may be required by law too. Trained users, does that really apply in this case?
Unless it's a real new feature.
But your user in this case, are the drivers of a car, and you cannot really, quote unquote, train your users. So in this case, this particular thing, about an information system does not apply. Why don't you think it applies in this case? And it applies in a general case of an information system, it does apply. How hard is it to use the ABS?
Not hard at all.
Just apply brakes.
Yep.
Apply pressure.
Exactly. So that's only because the user interface is very simple and very few things can go wrong. Okay, the only thing that can go wrong is when people sense the pulsating action of ABS in action. They will try to let go of the brakes, thinking something is wrong with the system. But that's the only thing that people have to train to use an ABS system, is not to stop applying pressure on your brakes. Okay. How about Amazon.com? Using Amazon for shopping. Do you have to get some training to do that sort of thing?
Do from your kids.
Yeah, you can get training from your kids. Mom, I've done research already. I want to buy this, and let me show you the research. I have opened up all the tabs with competing products and user comments and rating and stuff like that, right? Okay. There's no conversion of data because there's no data stored in the previous system, and therefore there's no conversion to a new system also. Any questions about this particular example? It's a very atypical example of an information system, but yet it is still an information system. So we are now moving on to the next section here. Keeps doing this because it doesn't like implementation and maintenance. I thought we just went through that. Okay. Data security. Do you think your car has any type of data security?
Yes.
What type of data security?
Alarm system.
The alarm system and the GPS too. That's a privacy issue. A lot of cars, now come with GPS and also the ability to communicate with quote unquote mothership. They don't call it that. What are some of the brand names that you can think of when you think when I said your car can talk to a mothership?
Also.
All-Star, And there are alternatives to All-Stars now. I think different manufacturers can choose a different service provider. What do you think All-Star can do?
Call the police.
They can call the police, okay? What else can they do?
Shut down your car.
They can lock your doors or unlock your doors. In other words, they have control of the locks of the door. What else can they do? They can turn off the vehicle.
They can listen to you and you not drive.
They can listen to you even when you don't want them to listen to you. Okay? They can eavesdrop. Okay? There has been cases like that. I think was it with a mafia or a gang. The government, got the correct, the subpoena, and also did all the paperwork, and the court, said approved, and they were able to have OnStar to record conversations inside the car of suspects, and was able to use it as evidence in the court.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. Kind of heard from that they can actually, from a mechanic's point of view, they have, because most cars nowadays come with like a built-in Bluetooth.
Mm-hmm.
That they have Bluetooth diagnostic computers and stuff that read through Bluetooth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can't that actually also be hacked
Yes.
outside the car?
Yep. Only if it is enabled. I mean, if you enable Bluetooth, Bluetooth inherently has a security feature, but it's also inherently very weak. It's very hackable. So definitely, if you turn on, Bluetooth to your onboard diagnostic OBD2, port, it's definitely a security issue. Yep. What about privacy issue? Remember, your car has GPS too. Okay. So do you think your car might track, where you have been, where you're going, that sort of thing?
Personalized advertisements for you.
Exactly. Does it do that already? Personalized advertisement?
That'd be interesting.
What
If
about
it did.
that?
I noticed you go to McDonald's a lot.
I would not, be surprised, if it's not for safety reasons, I think we'll have it already, even right now. As you drive down the road with an integrated, GPS, in your car, it would just keep announcing, ads and commercials, as you drive.
I don't think that get. I think that could get too close to causing like problems, like you're saying, safety issues, because
Right.
Sponsored by
you basically be bombarded with a bunch of ads while you're trying to drive. And,
Yep.
I mean, I guess it's no different than the radio, but.
Very keen on that.
Exactly. Now you
but
have a
the
very
radio
good point
isn't
there.
Guiding you where you need to go.
That is correct, but nonetheless, there is a conflict of interest here. So I think, people who put in the laws, to basically say it is not okay to have your GPS to keep advertising when you're driving, some of that, money may be contributed by radio stations. Because then you'll be listening to the advertisement from the GPS instead of listening to the radio. Right?
Yeah.
All right. Now, in terms of a corporation, let's say Los Rios, okay, which is it's not a bank, it's not a military installation. It doesn't seem to have to deal with a whole lot of sensitive data, or do we?
Yeah.
When you think about your student application, registration forms, and stuff like that, do you have a lot of things that you would think you might want to be able to protect or make sure the district doesn't lose that data or have it released accidentally? Yeah. So a lot of organizations, especially government and also educational organizations like Los Rios, has a lot of concerns about data security. What type of a security breach do we have to protect against? What kind of information about you that you think, okay, I really need to make sure that information is not, stolen by somebody? Your social, your address, and a lot of other information about you. Have you guys ever taken a class like an English writing class? Some of you might have, or another class that has a writing component. We in D2L Design to Learn, it has an interface to hook up to what's the name of that thing? It's a plagiarism checking mechanism. turn it in. That's it. Okay, the service is called turn it in. So D2L has the ability to automatically submit your submission in writing to turn it in, and turn it in is a service. It's basically a closed-end service, and they just take your writing sample, and they will check on the internet and also its own database to see whether your submission has any type of significant matches with existing literature and stuff like that. Okay, so in that case, do you think there's any type of security and privacy issue that you might be concerned about? There is some, okay, because the way the two systems interact, D2L and turn it in, the way they interact is, there may be some sharing of, let's say, student ID. Okay, so now we have student ID, and then we have the work to be checked. Now, sometimes, turn it in may identify, plagiarism when there's none. It's possible to have false positives, right? So, what do you think turn in can do with that information? They have your student ID, and they have a false positive, but they don't know that it's a false positive. Your professor will know, but turn in does not. So now they can use that information and share it with other organizations maybe. Okay, and it's a privacy issue. Yep.
Wonder if that was something like that would be an issue if you're trying to apply for another college later down the road.
Mm-hmm.
You see, oh, you have.
Yep, you have some records, already on file, at turn in, right? What about your, assignments, that you turn in through, some online management system? Okay, let's say I'm taking a math class. Okay, let's say I'm taking an algebra class, and I have to do my assignments online and turn in my homework assignments online too, which is not, atypical these days. And let's say, it's not a website run by the district, not run by Los Rios, and it is, let's say, is it Edison Wesley? That's one of the big publishers for math books. Okay. Anyway, just let's say it's a publisher website, and I do really poorly on algebra. What do you think they can do with that information? They can sell it. Yeah, they can sell it to people who either provide tutoring service. They can sell you additional textbooks and say, "Tack, I can see that you have scored really poorly in algebra. Maybe this book will help you." Right? Sorry?
So here's a link to Algebra for Dummies. That's what I mean.
Yep. And you can purchase it online. We have your credit card number already on file. Just click yes. Yes.
Just click yes.
But that's a privacy issue too, because I may not want to share that information. Okay? And I may not even have a little checkbox, when I sign up, to say, do you want to share, information about you, and also, your score, with our affiliated companies. They may not even give you a box to check. Now, if they gave you a box to check and explain that they might do something about your information and you have an option to opt out, that's one thing. But if they don't give you an option, they don't tell you what they do with your information, and they do it, they share it, that's another thing. Yep.
I think aren't they legally required to tell you whether they sell your information to other
Now
parties?
with Los Rios, yes. Okay, with Los Rios, we are, obligated to protect your privacy. We'll do everything that we possibly can to make sure that your score, your information is not, leaked out to anyone who is not supposed to have it. On campus and off campus, all our offices, have, really, they use encryption and all sorts of other mechanisms to protect your data. But the same may not apply to publisher websites. Okay, because publisher websites are quote unquote voluntary. Okay, so people sign up for the service, voluntarily. It's just like with Amazon. Okay, do they share your purchase history? Of course they do, right? eBay, of course they do. What about Google? Well, Google looks at what you type also, with your Google documents and also email. There's no privacy guaranteed whatsoever. I mean, that's how they generate their revenue. But in the case of a publisher, it's kind of in a gray area, right? It's not a school, and yet it is not a like Google or Amazon. It is a for-profit organization. But at the same time, it has access to a lot of information about you and your performance, in your classes. So that's kind of like a gray area. And so right now, I think the campus, or not the campus, the district, the Los Rios district as a whole, has a lot of focus on student privacy. And data security is related to privacy, because in this case, we're trying to prevent people from hacking into the system to get your information, basically by stealing it. Any questions? Any feedback from you guys? What other types of data security can be very important? Well, think of the organizations first, okay? Because information systems are installed in many different types of organization. What about that air traffic planning system that the Air Force uses? You think the data security may be important there?
Yeah.
It's very important. How many, do you think those systems are under attack occasionally or constantly? Constantly. By what type of people? The typical 13, 14-year-old, at home trying to hack into a system and so they can play chess with the computer? Okay, where did that came from? Where did that come from? War game, exactly. No, we're talking about entire countries here. We're talking about entire countries pooling, resources so they can hack into computers of, different countries. It's not even friendly versus unfriendly countries. Every country, can do it to another country, even though they may be, friendly countries. They're not at war. Okay. So when we talk about data security, it's not really just corporate, data security. It's just basically data security as a whole. They lump a lot of things into data security. These are not entirely data security issues. Like power outages is not a data security issue. It's a reliability issue, but it's not security. You can make a system very reliable and not secure, and opposite, you can also make a system not reliable but very secure. Okay, so those two things are completely kind of different things. But in terms of security, they have these items here: deterrence, preventive countermeasures, corrective procedures, and detection. All right, think of your home network. Okay, so we are not talking about corporate data security. We're just talking about your home router. Okay, you use Comcast, you use AT&T, you use Shore West, and you have a little router at home. What can possibly go wrong in terms of security when you do stuff on the internet? Or just turn on your router. You can get attacked. And how do people attack your wireless router?
Through the internet?
You can do it through the internet. They can also just drive by your house, right? They can just park next to your house, and with a directional antenna, they can actually park like down the street from your house, and they can still get the connection to your Wi-Fi router. What do you think they can possibly do, or why do they want to even break into your network?
Personal information.
They can get your information.
A lot of people nowadays use programs like QuickBooks because it's so much easier than pen and paper. So all the financial information is stored on the computer or home network. Usually it's on a data storage drive because they have other financial information.
And how many?
Really large.
Well, it's not just that information too. It's also how you log in to do online banking. How do you guys log into online banking? How many people do not do online banking? Okay, we have a few. Okay, but most people do. When you do online banking, you have to log in with your username and your password. How many people have your browser remember your passwords? Nobody? Seriously?
I do, but it doesn't work for my bank site.
Okay.
It doesn't allow it.
Okay.
Yeah, like an email or two.
Right. So with banks, even if the browser offers you that option, I would never choose to let it do it. Okay. Now, when you store your password, go ahead.
Yeah, well, usually when I do online banking, they do the private browsing
Mm-hmm.
and VPN or whatever.
Your browser can still be broken, by a hacker. So they can still install, like really nasty stuff like keyloggers and whatnot, on your system. So whenever you do online banking or when you enter your username and password on the system, you always have some exposure, potential exposure. But a lot of times, the exposure, can be kind of limited, depending on how you use the system, whether you use, various type of software to ensure that your system is secure. But if we get back to data security, how do you deter people from, breaking into your computers?
Actually put a password on your router.
You put a password on your router.
Wireless network.
You enable the strongest encryption possible on your router.
And do a local instead of broad range. How some wireless has a long range,
Mm-hmm.
and it extends outside the house. At least try to minimize it, the radius.
Turn off SSID broadcast, so they can't even see your.
See your ESSID.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what if you have a member in the family who has a Nintendo DS, which cannot do web, WPA, encryption? It can only do web, WEP, which is a weak encryption scheme. What do you do in that case?
Tell them don't get on the internet.
Upgrade the DS to a 3DS. That's one route. Most routers can be set up so they can actually give you multiple services. So you can actually have WEP on one side, for really, insensitive type of traffic, and then you can have WPA2 on the other side for everything else. Okay, but under no circumstances, should people use WEP in general, because that's just almost as good as no encryption. Preventive, well, I would call that preventive countermeasure, because you're using encryption so that people cannot get in. When people do hack into your system, your computers, do you have anything installed or already in place to at least do detection? Because you cannot do corrective procedures unless you can detect there is a problem. How do you detect there's a problem with your home computers?
Run a security scan.
It just won't boot anymore. Or when it starts up, the browser automatically go to certain pages, right? But by the time it gets to that stage, it's too late already. So how do you detect there's a problem? There may be a problem before you even get that work, before it gets that bad.
Monitor the performance on your computer.
Okay.
At least once a week to make sure. Because usually if you get hacked or they install something else, there is changes on your computer, but most people don't pay attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they get to the stage where they open the browser and they start surfing automatically.
Yep. Now, why do you think it comes in stages? When your computer is getting hacked, it's not just, oh, it's hacked or versus, it's not hacked. There are different levels of getting hacked too. So why do you think there are different levels?
Test install.
Because they will first try to install what they call a backdoor first. A backdoor basically is allowing a hacker to come back to your computer later to install additional bad stuff on your computer. Okay, so that's the first thing, which is usually very fairly undetectable because it doesn't consume a lot of resources. But when it gets more and more malware get installed on your computer, like keyloggers and all the other good stuff, bad stuff I mean, your computer will become slower and slower, because it actually has more traffic and more processing involved. And at some point, it will get to a point where, you just turn on the computer and you can tell right away something is wrong. And that's why it actually goes in stages. If you try to catch it early on, when only a backdoor is installed, maybe you haven't lost anything yet at that point, because the hacker or the script may not have time to install additional components at that time. Okay, it's just possible. In terms of detection, there's also intrusion detection. Does anyone know what is intrusion detection? Which I think is actually better than detecting virus.
Isn't that like the firewall?
You can do it with a firewall, Okay, a firewall can detect certain patterns of access to your system that is indicative of something bad is about to happen. When a hacker or a computer is trying to hack into your computer, they usually have to do a port scan first because they have to identify, okay, are there any open ports? I know this is not a networking class, so I'm just going to go over the terms really quickly. But it basically has to do a scan first to identify, are there any security hosts that I can exploit? Okay, and a port scan can be detected by a firewall. Okay, so if your system can detect, hey, somebody is scanning me, and it's a prelude of an actual attack, you can either decide, okay, I don't think my system is ready for this sort of thing, and just shut it down, or you can double check at that time to make sure that you have all the software, all the protection turned on. So early detection, it is called intrusion detection, is very important. The intrusion detection software can even sometimes potentially identify what type of attack the other side is trying to launch. So you have a little bit of time to respond to it, either by just turning off the computer altogether, or you can start logging. Okay, in other words, you can start logging the traffic to your computer. So later on, if you need to, you have all that data to turn into authorities, so that some people can help you to track down who is trying to hack into your system. But for the most part, you just want to stop the attack. Some software can automatically do it. They can detect a intrusion attempt, and they can close the ports automatically for you. Most of the residential routers should not have open ports. In other words, under no circumstances can an outsider initiate a connection to one of your computers. But that doesn't give you complete security. Why doesn't that give you complete security? You basically just lock the door altogether. No one can come in. So why do you think you can still get viruses and worms and all the other bad stuff on your computer?
Stuff you let in. It's the stuff you open the door to.
Yep, they're called Trojans for a reason, right? Does everybody know what is a Trojan or Trojan horse? The story about the Trojan horse. The gate is closed. It's impermeable, but they presented the gift outside and say, hey, this is for you. Oh, great! Open the gate, bring it in, and guess what's inside the horse? An army. Basically, a small elite army inside the horse.
That opens the gate for the rest.
Yep, exactly, and that's exactly how Trojan horse is in the sense of computer security. That's how it works too. Now, what about in the setting of a corporate, like a big organization? Do you think that is still a concern? Someone who may not have a lot of security clearance may think, hey, since I don't have social security number access, it's okay to browse the web on my computer, because even if my computer is infected, I don't have any access to PeopleSoft and stuff like that. It should be okay, no concern, right? No, wrong. Because if this computer is compromised, it becomes the launch point of all future attacks. Because a lot of times, people who design the network and the security system of a corporate network, they are only defending against external threats. A lot of times they forget that one of the computers inside can be infected and launch attacks from within. And that's why there's a false sense of security of internet versus intranet. Internet is from the outside. A lot of systems have good protection against outside threats. But a lot of times system administrators make the wrong assumption and say, oh, if this is the intranet, everything is safe, and we don't have to do a lot of things to secure the system. That is not a very good idea. Okay, so we are done with this part of the lecture. And then next time, on Tuesday, I'll give you guys more guideline of your presentations. Yep. Tuesday. Oh, Thursday. That's right, Thursday.
That'd be
I'm
nice.
skipping a day.